So these designs were created using the new Gemini 3. And you can see it's far more creative. It's far better at animation. It's really, really good with typography, logic, pretty much everything. This is the golden era for me. It's like the mid-journey era for web design. And I'm gonna show you that I was wrong at first with Gemini, because the first time I used it, I had a very generic prompt. For example, creating a landing page, and it's still very bad with purple colors and generic type of UI. But the thing is, and this is what we're going to learn today, is how do we get the best out of this? Because if you do it right, especially with just a few fixes, such as giving the style, you can get far better results. So for example, in the style of Apple, you get better monochrome colors and visual hierarchy and typography. And of course, if you want to get to the level of something like this with animations, you can see it's really well animated. It has interactions, it has the beam, which are new techniques, by the way. And then when you scroll, you have these beautiful interactions, icons, and I mean, look at that. It's really good at these non-rounded corners, which usually GPT or Claude tends to always go with the rounded corners. So this is awesome. Really good with big typography, colors that are out of the ordinary, the sort of purple thing, interactions that are amazing, but most importantly, you really steer the wheels and you really tell it to be creative in one way or the other. And you can see typography and styles and shadows. And you can see from here, we have the light mode as well. Usually it's very good with dark mode before. Now it's also very good with light mode. And you can remix it into dark mode and look at the style difference between the two. And this was done by basically combining this design with this design to give us this one, which is so cool. So the fact that AI is able to sort of mix and match, I think that's incredible. So today we're going to look at 3 super powerful techniques. The first one is inspiration, feeding references, code, images. This is so incredibly important with Gemini 3 because, as you can see, we don't want basic. We want the best at first in one shot, as much as you can. I'm not saying that you should only do one shot because the best details comes later as you iterate. And then we're going to look at the second technique, which is how do you edit all of these designs, right? Like how do you change the logo? How do you fix the issues, the mistakes? How do you add animations such as this? So for example, we're going to take a look at Unicorn Studio and then bring that to the layout. We're going to look at how we can add these animations such as the border beam, when you click on something, or how you prompt for those kind of interactions. Because more than ever, this is where ChatGPT 5.1 struggles with the animations, the interactions, all of these new things. And honestly, I'm so impressed with what you can do nowadays with animations, especially with Gemini 3. And the third part is what do you do with the design that you're creating, let's say in Aura, because this is all HTML, and we have a ton of templates and components that you can use, as well as backgrounds, buttons. So these are really important references that you're gonna need for your design, and assets, right? Now, the question is, once you're done with all of this, how do you export it to something like Gemini, Lovable, Figma, so that you can use it to supercharge your current workflow? In my case, I love to use Cursor because of the amazing control that you have. All right, let's talk about inspiration because you need to have a library of the best designs that you find. And typically the most popular ways to find those designs is to use a tool like Mobbin, for example, and you collect the best designs, the best UI patterns, the best animations, and so on. And then you feed that into Gemini 3. So you have awesome tools like MyMind, for example, which lets you collect all of these amazing inspirations. And then you have Dribble, Ilapa Ninja, Contra, all of these great places where you can save your favorite designs, the styles and vibes. And this is, again, extremely important because you're going to take a lot of screenshots. And especially for Mobbin, it's really well organized. And when you go into a website, you're going to see that you have the animations and then you have the section, which is exactly how I would design my website. Not just with a full landing page, but trying to be as specific as possible for each of those sections. And so, of course, these are used as inspiration, as sort of like a blueprint, a wireframe for what you're trying to build. You're going to ask AI to adapt it, to change the text, the names, the numbers, the colors, and most importantly, you're going to say something like adapt, because once it has a hero section and you're happy with it, everything else that you create after it is going to be consistent with it, including the animations, the interactions, the branding, and so on. Now on Mobbin, you're going to need a pro account if you want to have more designs and you want to be able to search for like hero section, which is something that I want to start with. This is my best strategy. So what we're going to do is, because Dribble and Contra, we are just going to look for inspiration, such as you're going to go to Dribble, you're going to go to web design, and you're going to find the design that speaks to you. Again, use this mostly as a wireframe and focus on the hero section. So for example, we can try something like this one, which is very difficult in terms of layout. Typically, GPT 5.1 would have a lot of trouble with this, even though it's the second best model. It will have a lot of trouble with this type of layout, the floating elements, the grid, and all that stuff. Another awesome place is Panda, where you can check all of these places such as Dribble, but also product design as a topic. And a really cool website that I just landed on is called Affinity, which is a new design tool that is free. And then you can see it has a pretty cool interaction as well as different sections. So this is the type of inspiration that you're looking for, and you want to sort of remix this or use as an inspiration, as a wireframe. So you can essentially, take a screenshot, right? And we're going to give this to Gemini and to see how it's going to be able to replicate this. All right, now that you have done collecting all the designs that you want to use for inspiration, it can also be your own design, by the way. It can be your team's design. You want to be consistent with a specific design system and style guide. You can do so. This is honestly the best way. As we say, a picture is worth 1,000 words, and it cannot be more true in this case when you're prompting with AI. So the first thing I want to do is sort of like learn from the prompt builder, sort of like what are the layout types, configuration, styles, and so on. This is really good training for someone who's new to the whole UI design space. And you can also remix an existing template and you can view it. This is really cool. But what we're gonna do here is we have the image. I think we have a ton context in that image. And so usually if you want to start from scratch, you would create a prompt, a landing page for a product, the name, and what type of app it is, a chat app, that does this in the style of Apple. This is a good sort of like not too generic, but very basic starting point. But in this case, we just want to use an image. It already has all the styles. It has the concept. We can change the text. You can also be specific about the names and so on. And the other thing that I like to use is to set right away the icons. So for example, I want iconify solar duotone, and I want SVG logos for the company logos. This saves me a ton of trouble because AI is not going to be able to do those things. So I'm going to add this to prompt, and I'm going to press enter. Of course, I need to select Gemini 3, and we're just going to see how it's going to go. I mean, look at this. This is so awesome. It didn't need to be exactly what we have in the screenshot. If you compare the two, it's a little bit angled. It has different names. Of course, it has different icons. All of this is intentional, and it should be. We're not trying to have exactly the same design. Of course, I wouldn't say change names and all that stuff. But this is awesome. It's a great starting point. What I can do is just change the images. For example, I'm gonna go here and I'm gonna select different images for fun. So I'm gonna select for abstract, for example. And there you go. So you can make these edits, you can fix the issues, you can remove stuff. So we can select this and just press delete. You can, change the icon. You can set to, for example, file, and then I want a different type of icon. You can do all of that stuff, which I think is super important to have the human part in all of this equation. You should not always rely on AI to do everything for you, even though at the beginning you might do more of that, but eventually you want to take control. All right, so now that we have this, we can try something really cool, which is we're going to take inspiration and we're going to use a template. Let's say I really like this black and dark template, and we're going to say like what we want to keep. So for example, keep the cards, but change the rest. And boom, look at this. Look at how creative it is. We combine a template that looks like this. Again, it has the style, it has the border beams, it has sort of the layout. It definitely took this part here and it took sort of the concept of the footer. And then it creates something as awesome as this. This is mind-blowing. I told it to keep the cards and it did this. And so it's like having a senior designer that is only there to take direction, right? Because it's not going to do this on its own. Usually you want to tell what to do. And the senior designer, the senior front-end engineer is going to take that and turn that into pretty much gold. Now, of course, you can keep regenerating the entire page because that's what we essentially do at Aura. We read the entire code base. This has the highest accuracy possible, and it's going to fix your code. It's going to clean your code. Just keep in mind that everything is HTML here. You can essentially just copy and paste the entire code, bring that to any platform such as Lovable, V0, and Cursor, and just recreate the whole thing in React, for example. But what we're going to try to do here, you can keep doing that, but you can also go to design mode. You can sort of like go to each element, and let's say you want to change it. So we're going to go to prompt. Of course, we have all of these design tools, which I absolutely love to do. And then you're going to go to prompt, and then this is where you can sort of like change the button or animate the button. So I can say change to, and then we're going to go to a different button. And you can select any of these buttons, such as this one, and adapt, make it square, and we can also say like animate border beam using yellow, and it's only going to generate the code for that. It's going to be much faster, but still it reads the entire code base, which means that it has context of all the things that we're mentioning, which is awesome. And there you go. So when I preview this, it's showing me this awesome button, and it animated with the border beam and so on. We also have this one, I can ask it to animate. So when you want to have control over a single element, you go to the design mode, and this is just really easy to work with. You can also change the font size and so on. You can even go to the code, and it gives you only the code for that specific element. So you can imagine if you're someone who's quite familiar with code and you want to have control over the Tailwind classes, but also if you're someone who's new, you want to learn sort of like the naming, the cheat code of Tailwind. What is MB8 or font medium or serif? So these are all vocabularies that are added to your arsenal when you're going to be dealing with AI, such as Gemini 3, which requires all of this context to work really, really well. The other thing that I like to do is to select a section, and then using this section here, I'm going to add a new section, and I'm just going to go to any of these designs. And let's say I really like this section. I'm going to take a screenshot, and then I'm going to use the prompt builder before I'm going to paste this into. And I'm just going to say something like adapt a new section, change text names and numbers. And again, I want to make sure that the AI is using all of these. So the icons, which is really important to me. And the same with the images, but the images are easy to change in the design tools here. All right, so this is adding right after the section, and it adapted the entire style, and I'm doing all of this visually. And then because I specified the icons, such as the logos, it's using those logos, and it's really, really useful because this is SVG, these are not images. And at this point, we can just ask it to fix certain elements, such as this one. We can even change the main color, and then we can also add animation. So right now, the animation looks a little bit like this. It's not consistent how it's animated. So to do that consistency, you can go here, and we're going to regenerate the whole page because we want to sort of like clean up the HTML and want to make sure that we're not missing anything. So we want to test the layout against multiple resolutions, such as the iPad. We can see we have a problem here, and we have this problem here. We also want to test for mobile. So this is pretty good. Really smart to have Gemini 3 to do all of that hard work for us. Usually, back in my day, right, like we spent so many hours fixing for different browsers, different mobile resolutions. So shift here, and we're gonna use animate on scroll and animate keyframe. And this should have enough context. We're gonna apply this. All right, so this is what we have, and you can see the animation is really fun. It's really good, and it's consistent here. Of course, we can fix it a little bit more. And, this is why, for example, I want to use kind of like the design tool to edit these things, because sometimes it takes a lot of prompt, a lot of waiting. So something like this can easily be fixed by adding a little bit of like fixing the code, or, like in this case, it was using a position for some reason, and so that fixes it. And of course the logo, and then I can certainly click on the logo here, and I can change, this would be a placeholder. Of course you would have your own logo, and if you do that, then you might want to select the whole thing and then go into the code and just copy the SVG code, and then you replace the SVG code here. But otherwise we do have a collection of logos. For example, you can use solar, bold duotone, and I can use any of these awesome, logos and icons and so on. Another thing we can do is to add the background. So we're gonna go to assets, and then we have a bunch of presets. So for example, we have this one that I like to use. And one thing you're gonna see is that you can customize these backgrounds, right? So the colors and so on. But let's say we're gonna go with this one, maybe this one. And I think it fits really well. I think one of the key rule of design is that whatever background that you choose, you don't want that background to be in the way of the elements that are in the front. So these are kind of like your heroes, and you don't want the background to be competing. So this is a good background because it's not in the way. There's a lot of empty space from the background here, so it's not in the way of the heading, it's not in the way too much of the text here. So that's why I would go most likely with this background. And then you want to look into the saturation. So you want to change the color. You can also change the hue that to fit sort of like the color that you want. In this case, I'm going to go with gray. I can also change the brightness if I want to have a little bit more focus in the foreground. I can also change the blur, but we're also losing the details. So this is really cool. And of course, we are able to share these. So I'm gonna include some of these Unicorn Studio backgrounds that you can use, such as this one, the beam. This is really fun. And once you have this shared with you, you're gonna be able to remix it. So for example, it's gonna look a little bit like this when I duplicate it, and then you can sort of like play around with it. So for example, get familiar with the effects, the filter. You can change the gradient map. You can sort of like change the colors and all that stuff. This is definitely like a different video on its own. But one thing that I want to show you is, for example, I'm going to use the glyph, which I find super awesome. As you can see, it's turning the whole thing into symbols, and you can change the scale. And you can also change the shape. So for example, if you want something like square, which I really like, or something like circle, which I also really like, and it's in the background, it's not too much in the way. So you can certainly finish this with a embed, and then you copy the ID, and then you go back to Aura, and this is where you can essentially just paste that ID here, and voila. So now I have that background that I just created. Again, you are remixing. So I'm gonna share some of these backgrounds. It's gonna be in the description, and you can sort of like download it, edit it, and export it, and then just get the sort of the ID, and then you're gonna be able to use that in your project. This again is something that AI will not be able to do for you, and even if it does, it would do it everything in code. It might or might not get the effects that you want. So like I said, I want you to understand that the human part is extremely important. Whatever skills and knowledge as a designer that you have in the past is useful for you because you know how to prompt better. You know how to fix these things manually, how to change the text, how to change the gradient. So for example, here, maybe I want to keep the gray. So what I want to do is change the blend mode to screen instead. So now it's not taking over the sort of the grid lines in the background. And the same with the ability to set it to fixed or absolute. If you know a little bit of web design, you would use absolute because you don't want it to stick when you scroll. So it's going to stick to the hero section. So these are small little things that adds up so much to your knowledge, to your arsenal. And even if you have to describe all of these things in the prompt, they're still extremely useful as part of your skills. So to be able to know how to use AI is so incredibly important, and I cannot stress that enough, which is why we have the design tool, we have all of these tools like Unicorn Studios, all of these inspirations that you can use to really supercharge what you're able to do with AI. Another thing that I love to use with Aura, in addition to all of these editing tools, is we have something unique, which is border gradients. But first, let's start with the sort of the linear gradient for the background. you can have some of these presets, colors. You can change the angle super easily. You can change the opacity. But most importantly, most design tools, they don't have a border gradient. And so unless you download like a plugin or something or a component, but we do have that, and we have these amazing presets. It's really good when it's like gray and all that stuff, but since we have a color, we're gonna set the white to be like maybe 60%, and then you have this really nice border gradient here. This is what I use, by the way, to get these awesome sort of like liquid glass effect. You can click on this, and then you know, you can change the background here. You can see I'm changing the different styles, the different colors, hues, but most importantly, you can change the border gradient. So you can see I'm changing sort of like the angle of the border gradient, also change the opacity of it, so to be more shiny, for example. Again, you can change, you have so many options. I think this is really fun for someone who wants to play around with this, especially if you're a designer. Another thing that we love to have is the drop shadow. And again, you don't need to download like a beautiful shadow. We have a bunch of presets, and these are all, you know, Tailwind code. We also have angle, you know, like you can see this is like a, you know, a drop shadow that is a little bit diagonal, which is really fun. We have beautiful shadows, and, you know, and so on. So there's a lot of these options that are really fun in Aura that you can play around and really elevate the design that you currently have, because AI is not going to be able to do all of those things, especially the things that are more complex or less in the norm, like less in the baseline. So once you're finished with your design, what I can recommend is to go to preview, and this is where you can get into the canvas. Well, you can obviously publish this, right? So you can get publish, you take a screenshot, and then you publish, you share it with the world, and this is great. Now for the screenshot, a lot of people have trouble creating beautiful screenshot for a presentation. So this is why I created the Canvas tool for the mockups. And what you want to do here is to get out, and you want to use one of these presets. So for example, I'm going to click on the desktop preset, and this is where I can sort of like make it bigger or smaller. And you know, a very common preset is this one, because the goal here is to show the entire design. And then you can customize sort of like the corner radius, the ring thickness, and then we can also customize the background, right? So this makes for awesome screenshot, and then you can share it on social media, make it more unique. You can change the size here. So for example here, and I'm gonna make this a little bit taller, and voila. So, you know, you take a screenshot where you think is the most interesting, and then you can also change different options. So for example, let's say I don't want a color, instead I want an image. So now I can use one of the abstract image. And so, you know, I want to use maybe something landscape or whatever you want. This is pretty awesome. It gives a really nice contrast to the blackness of the interface, and it's going to make for an awesome screenshot. So, you know, you have all of these customizations, but now let's talk about exporting. So first of all, you want to copy the HTML or you want to download the HTML. You can also copy to Figma, and then in Figma, you're going to paste the design. I mean, look at this. Look at just how awesome we have it, right? It has all the layers, has all the auto layout. And I mean, you know, sure, it doesn't have the animations and all that stuff. It's not perfect because essentially we're turning HTML code with animation and all that stuff into a static design tool. But as far as I can tell, this is like 90% of the work, and the rest is just sort of like whatever you want to add whether they have their own sort of liquid glass tool or, you know, the gradients and stuff like, or the backgrounds, the images and the plugins that you use in Figma. But otherwise, you can download the HTML, right? And you can, or you can copy the HTML. So at the end, you're gonna go to something like Gemini, and then you want to recreate this in Gemini. So recreate this with React, and then we're gonna build it. Now, what is the purpose of building here? Well, of course, they have React and they have their own system to iterate, to animate, to have components, all of these things that you might want to have, where Aura is more for like designing, animating, templates, assets, components, references. And honestly, I like to think that just the templates for itself is enough for the ticket price, because like this is extremely valuable to any designer, to anyone who's starting out, because most of these templates, especially at the quality of this one, for example, would cost $10, $20, $30 or more. And we have, you know, thousands of them. And so I think it's really valuable, on top of the fact that you have all the tokens that you can use for Aura, and you can build beautiful, beautiful design, especially using image to HTML. Now, we're gonna go back to, you know, here, which honestly, the reason why I prefer to use Aura, also, in addition to having the design tool and all the editing options that Gemini doesn't have, is also how fast it is to do in Aura. So for example, to generate, you know, a landing page, you might wait something like 30 seconds. Here, you might need to wait like 3 minutes, and every single time. So, you know, there's a lot of, it's a different workflow, and you should definitely, you know, try both. And boom, look at that. With just the HTML, it turned everything into React, and almost to perfection. They still, for some reason, brought back this issue. But yeah, you know, you can always prompt to fix that. But the animations is all there. If I refresh it, I don't know if, yeah, there's a refresh right here. And yeah, it has all the animations, everything basically the same way that we had in Aura. The only difference is that now everything is in React, and you can deploy this, you can make this, you know, not just a landing page, but something that is connected to your full app. And I think that's really important for a lot of companies, for a lot of startups, for a lot of, you know, engineers or front-end designers. But, you know, this is really fun. So again, we have a ton of templates that you can use to feed into Gemini 3. We have the design tools that you can use to fix issues, to add, to elevate your design with beautiful drop shadows, with beautiful animations and gradients and all that stuff. And images, of course, we have, you know, 25,000 images that you can use, and we upload every single day new ones with, you know, images that really, really fits web design in general, and they are like at 4K resolution. And so we have components that you can use to remix new sections. You know, what I would recommend a lot is like, if you don't have an idea or if you don't have a vibe, of course you can use image to HTML. I think that's really powerful, but you can also use these components, and they're already functional, and it already has all the details. It's not gonna make mistakes. It doesn't need more iterations. And you can ask for light and dark mode. You can ask for animation. You can ask to change the fonts and all that stuff. So the flexibility is amazing. And then you have the section, and the sections can be anything like the features or the pricing. You know, we have awesome, awesome design that we put a lot of time into. We have the buttons, super useful. You can also use UIverse that has an amazing library of buttons, you know, and different cards and stuff like that. You also have 21st Dev, which is also really awesome. And this might be a little bit more complex. You might need to know how to code and how to sort of like get the code for your component, for your design. Because yeah, you know, sometimes, you know, one thing that is discouraging to a lot of beginners is that how do you deal with so many files, right? you know, if you look at something like AI Studio, you might have to deal with, you know, 20 files or 10 files, versus here, you only need to deal with a single file. And that simplifies so much the process of learning HTML, because HTML has existed for so long, and everyone at least knows some basic of HTML. So we make this as simple as possible, and you can use that, and then you can do like a remix, or you can say like combine styles, and then you reference the components or the templates, and then you can just like mix and match. You can adapt to light and dark mode and so on. So I hope you enjoyed this video. We have so many templates that we're working on, and we can't wait to see what we can do more with Gemini 3 and new models as they improve. And you know, we're gonna add a ton of these backgrounds like Unicorn Studios. Like I said, I'm gonna include those links that you can remix in the description, and you can just play with some of these options. There's so many things you can do. You can add and filters, and you know, just like the light trail, right? It's so much fun that you can add to it. You know, with the glyph on top of it. I mean, just one click, right? This is so cool. And yeah, you know, so many things you can do. Make sure that you understand that you can remix things, and make sure that you understand that you have the most power is when you give a ton of description in your prompt. Otherwise, you don't want that purple generic design that is so basic. You want something more polished and refined like this, and then you're going to combine it with another design or another component to create something completely different. Whether the design is within your team or within a design system or within, you know, a community or something that you have created in the past, just have fun with it. Just mix and match. Just let AI cook, and I think you're gonna create the most amazing designs. So I hope this is useful, and I'll see you in the next video.